watching a second of that.
Following the meeting of the Shorewood Board of Order
And I'll just watch it.
at 7:35.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Has this, the first thing I want to do is remind our citizens to be heard that there's a form to be filled, that there's a new process, and you can fill out a form in the back of the table. If you'd like to do so ahead of time and hand it in to Sarah. The second thing I wanted to do is, has this meeting been noticed in accordance with applicable law?
Meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
All trustees are present, with the exception of President Rosen, who is excused. Okay, so the first item on the agenda for this meeting is a special order of business. And it is considered addendum 1 to purchase and sale memorandum agreement for Shorewood Fire Station number 83. Rebecca, are you presenting this or is the chief?
I'd be happy to, and then the chief can weigh in if there's any other comments that you'd like to add. As you'll recall, we had approved the sale and purchase memorandum associated with the fire station last year. And one of the intents of that memorandum was that the property immediately go to close following planning commission, design review board approval, and approval of the facade easement. Those steps have concluded. However, the North Shore Fire Department does not have the funds on hand at this time because they're required to borrow through their municipality for purposes of the project. So that timeline for financing will take approximately 120 days. They'll anticipate receiving bond funds in January of 2020. In order to meet the intent of the agreement, the village will, based upon this memorandum, as of October 1st, no longer be charging the fire department rent. They will be making us an interest payment on the purchase price of the property from October 1st until disbursement of the funds from the bond proceeds in January of 2020. However, one distinct factor is that they will assume all property maintenance of the facility at that point in time. So I believe that it accomplishes both the intent of immediately closing on the property and then also facilitating clear understanding of how we're going to proceed in the interim until the renovation concludes. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Trustee Carpenter?
Just have one clarifying question. So you said that they will begin maintenance at this point or in January 2020?
At this point.
Okay.
Trustee
Just remind me what rent they pay in rent now.
Right now, they pay approximately $15,000.
For a year, it's 66,000. I think it comes up to about 5,000 a month.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, that, the remaining 3 months would be around 15,000, correct?
50,000, yeah, last quarter would be 50,000.
Maybe it was the way I was reading the addendum for sale, but I was a little confused as how the insurance is being handled for the last 3 months. Is the fire department picking up the entirety of that bill, or is it still being split amongst the village and the fire department?
We are actually both insured by the same property insurance. The village has, for a very long period of time, prior to my arrival, only been insuring the building for that portion that was previously occupied by the police department. And then North Shore Fire Department has been insuring just upwards of $2 million on the property in its entirety. There's no proration of our policies. So for example, if the village wanted to cancel coverage, we don't have an opportunity to do that. Our policy runs January 1 to December 31. So and it's minimal in terms of cost really for us for the rest of the year. The chief also feels comfortable with the amount of coverage that he currently has on the building and then the fact that they're going to be renovating directly thereafter in January. So we're comfortable in terms of how that reads.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve addendum 1 to the purchase and sale memorandum agreement for Shorewood Fire Station number 83.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion among the trustees? Does anyone in the public wish to make a comment? Seeing none.
I'd like to ask a question on number 3. It's anticipated that the funds that the North Shore needs to close will be obtained by the Whitefish Bay bond sale. The funds will not be available until the first week of January 2020. Okay, but if Whitefish Bay doesn't for some reason doesn't do that bond sale, you say the parties agree to close no later than 10 days after disbursement, let's say Whitefish Bay postpones that until February, then you wouldn't close until 10, it's February, whatever.
I think, no, I don't have it in front of me, but I think I would say 10 days from the proceeds.
Yeah.
I don't expect that to happen based on all meetings with Whitefish Bay. And tomorrow morning, we have a fire department board meeting, and they will start the process to then get Whitefish Bay moving to do the bond sale. So if tomorrow morning everything gets approved, then Whitefish Bay goes into motion. A lot of pre-work has been done, but the formal part of all that bond
And
sale.
is there bond sale for their stuff too, or just?
No, just ours.
Okay.
That's sort of the delay here is, that if you back up till earlier in 2019, they were gonna do a bond sale for multiple projects, including this project, but when this project wasn't finalized, they said, we don't wanna do a bond sale for something we don't know what's gonna happen. So that's hence why at the time we thought we would have the money to close, based on the first time around where they were going to do a one big bond sale in spring of this year, and that 500,000 would have been part of that. But when this project got slowed down a little bit, then they said, we don't want to do a bond sale, so we'll do a separate bond sale later for you guys. So hence we thought we were gonna have that money in hand, now we don't.
Any further discussion? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the second item in our agenda, which is related. Consider agreement for Shorewood Station number 83 maintenance and miscellaneous items. And I'd like to know for you.
Sure. So included in your packet, we have an agreement and a request from Chief Whitaker to consider, having the village consider providing some assistance with some items that we're in the business of. For example, snow removal with large vehicles and equipment. So there was a list that came in with a request as a part of the offering for that. North Shore Fire Department has offered to pay for the approximately $17,000 of landscaping improvements on village-owned property in the rear of our building in exchange for some of those routine maintenance items. Those items have been reviewed by our public works staff and myself, and we've come to a level of agreement in terms of what the expectations are. Again, we simply wanted to document how things would be working because in the absence of documentation, administrations and boards who are ahead of us will have a clearer path in terms of what has been agreed to. So we're recommending approval at this time.
So this is, one thing that wasn't clear to me from reading this is, so this is meant to last into perpetuity?
Mm.
So they do the landscaping and we pick up
Correct.
all the other pieces of this?
Are they going to pay the residential rate for garbage and recycling?
We would be providing them the equivalent of one residential refuse container and one residential recycling container. And then anything in addition to that, they would be responsible to pay for additional cars. So we would be paying for the first 2 cards of recycling. Our first card of recycling,
But
the
the
first card of
service,
removal.
but we're absorbing the cost of the service, or we don't get?
We're not getting reimbursed.
Okay.
Any further comment? Do you have a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the agreement for Shorewood Station number 83 maintenance and miscellaneous items.
Second. Second by trustee Bachhorst. Any further discussion from the trustees? Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you for putting it up front tonight. You don't know how much I appreciate it.
Next, we move on to citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda, so anybody that wishes to be heard, please step up to the microphone and state your name and address.
My name is Jeff Davidian, and I live at 4101 North Prospect. Several months ago, there was a discussion about an ethics board and establishing guidelines for conduct of public officials and employees. It was discussed briefly and then never brought up again. I'm in favor of an ethics board and an independent body that would consider allegations of ethical lapses by employees or public officials. And I wanted to ask your advice on how to proceed to begin to consider how to get an ethics board and what you recommend that I do in order to begin that process. How to spur it, because it's not frequently that people want to establish something that will monitor them, so that would probably have to come from outside. So how can I help you begin that? It's something that I think we need.
I would look at Rebecca for some input on that.
So one of the items that this board discussed was that not only an ethics board, but code of conduct relative to a number of different areas. The HRC was requested to weigh in at the end of one of those discussions, and I apologize because my memory's a bit foggy, right? It's been a couple months. And then after that, it was going to come back to this board for some further review and consideration as to whether or not we move forward or don't move forward. So it still remains in that pipeline.
So the question is, what do we do to help it along?
Well, that will be at the pleasure and direction of this board
So that's
as
why
they deem appropriate.
Okay, so I'd say things like providing feedback in this forum, contacting us to express your support of it, things like that will help to move it along, but it already is in the pipeline and as you said, coming back to the board at some point.
After HRC review.
So after how long, if nothing has happened, would you say that it would be appropriate for me to come back and remind you?
Is there an established timeline in this, Rebecca?
I would have to confer with Tyler in terms of what the schedule is for the HRC.
Okay.
That's all I can remember from.
So would you say 3 months? A month?
Definitely not a month, because our committees only meet sometimes once a month. And from my understanding, the HRC can, they're very diligent in terms of their review, so it may take them some meetings in order to render a level of recommendation. I would say 6 months.
Tyler, do you?
Doesn't that seem to be a judiciary issue?
I think at the time we had a discussion, and I don't want to get too far down the road here, because we don't want to talk about items. I'm sensitive to talking about items not on the agenda, but I thought we discussed it and we determined the most appropriate place was the HRC.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We went to HRC and then it's going to CAP.
Okay. HRC and
Oh,
HRC.
thank you. Thank you. It was a while ago.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thanks, sir. Good memory.
Do we have any other citizens to be heard? Seeing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion with respect to the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any items to be removed?
I'd like to pull item D.
Trustee Bowers pulling item D.
Item G.
Trustee Bachos is pulling item G.
B.
Trustee Carpenter is pulling item B. Trustee Carpenter is pulling item E.
No, B.
B.
Because
Okay.
of what?
I thought you said G. No.
G, she's G.
G, B, E, D. Is that right? G, B, E, and D?
We'll get the letters right at some point.
Yeah. Maybe we need to use the nouns, E as in goat, B as in boy.
So it's G, B, and E from what I can tell.
And D.
D.
And D.
G, B, D, and E.
Should we just go in the order?
I have B,
of
I have
Yeah,
B, D, E, G.
Let's let's go right
Village
down the
board
list.
minutes, application for special privilege for offense within public right of way, consider 2020 request for fireworks vendor, and consider appointment of Ryan O'Connor to the design review board. Are those the items?
Actually, also item C.
Okay, so let's go straight down the list on these items. So item B, let's start with.
We need to vote.
But we need to
on-
vote on a
Oh,
motion to approve with items B, C, D, E, and G. So moved.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Second by trustee Maher. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. So let's start with item B from the consent agenda.
I'd like to just defer these minutes to our next meeting. I had several questions for Department of Public Works that is going to take more time to follow up on, so the clerk asked if we could defer these minutes, so I'll move to defer them to our next meeting.
I'll second that.
Can I give you one small typo, or do you want me to? do
Just
that?
email us,
Okay.
right? Yep, that'd be great.
So we have a motion for deferral, a second. Any discussion?
I'm going to just make a comment that I'm appreciative that when we have to defer things like minutes, I know we've had discussions in the past, they're on here, let's talk about them now. So I have no problem with deferring the minutes this time, but just for a point of, data point, I wanted to say that, so.
Any further discussion on deferral of item B? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Let's move on to C.
C, consider updates to facade improvement program relative to painting as a non-eligible activity. Trustee Bachers.
Okay, and the reason I pulled this item was that I understand from reading the packet that the bid, I'm sorry, not the bid, the CDA did recommend this change, is that accurate?
Yes.
And was this, are you the CDA representative?
Trustee Menta and I.
Okay, and was this how did the vote go down? I mean, how strongly in favor? I'm just curious because under the guidelines that were previously outlined for the CDA for the facade improvement, painting was not a non-eligible. I'm just wondering why this changed.
And Trustee Menta, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was pretty unanimous in the room that we felt like painting was an inappropriate use of the facade improvement funds. We were seeing just people really not improving their facades and just doing a painting project with the facade improvement grants. So we are okay, and I think we came down that we're okay with painting as part of a larger facade improvement grant, but we aren't okay with just painting alone. So painting can take place, to be clear, but it has to be part of a larger project to improve the facade of the building.
So do other items require a larger monetary investment by the owner in order to receive the grant? Or is this based on painting not being an improved item, or a percentage of the overall investment?
I think it's the former, not the latter, where we just didn't think painting alone was appropriate for the facade improvement. We felt like it needed to be a more comprehensive project. And I think that was the sentiment within the room was pretty unanimous on that point. When they designed the actual guidelines for the facade improvement program, I think they wanted it to be more comprehensive as opposed to less comprehensive and restricted
Okay.
painting.
Thanks.
I'll move approval of updates to the facade improvement program relative to painting as a non-eligible activity.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Or do we have any further discussion? Seeing, do I ask, just a point of order, do I also ask for public input on the consent agenda? Is that something?
No, we typically not. And the public comment will be provided during the scope of the public comment session, unless there be something that we specifically are looking for. Or if someone comes to the slip to you.
Sorry for the aside. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-1.
6D, consider application for special privilege at 1821 East Menlo Boulevard. Trustee Maher.
Yes, I saw this. This is somewhat of a unique situation because it appears the applicant is lot number 9 in the portion where the fence is in lot 9, which lot 8 and 7 on the street, which is Kramer. So I wonder, and the village attorney can correct me, or Bart, we've talked a little bit, does the village actually own lot 8, that it's not like a typical right-of-way where the parcel goes to the middle of the street, but the street, who originally owned lot 8? Did the developer, it was plotted, did the person that owns lot 9 also own lot 8, or does the village actually own lot 8 as separate, even without the street, that it's our property?
I'm looking at you
Yeah,
to answer this.
so trustee Maher is referencing possibly the original plating of the village, which was included in the packet from 1888. At that time, Kramer was not envisioned to come north to meet with Menlo. So lots 8 and 7, at some point, roughly around 1910 to 1915, those were removed from the village map and shown as right-of-way, which is why it's excessively large compared to typical right-of-way. So at that point, I don't know if the technical term is they were discontinued or if the village purchased them back from the original owner. I don't have the history to understand that. All I can tell you is the current village map was also provided, does show Kramer Street, moving to intersect with Menlo, and that's why we have this excessive right-of-way in that area, is because the property lines were never modified, they were just, those two lots were removed. So this essentially has served as excess side yard, for the last 100+ years. And the map has just never been adjusted accordingly to move that line if the village board wanted to. But I don't have any exact answer to how that happened in 1910. Old maps is all I could find.
It's good this came up because it might be an opportunity to do a little more research. I don't know, the deeds that the county have, who owns that, what exactly, the survey map on the property looks like it's just lot 9 is what's the applicant's property.
That's just right-of-way now, right?
Correct, it's right away. I don't know how it became right away, I guess is maybe the question, but it is currently
It was
definitely
probably
right away.
abandoned, yeah, at the time, there's a formal abandonment process, and it was probably just, that was probably undertook because they might have had a different they probably envisioned a different layout for the street, as you were mentioning, or they thought there was gonna be something wider in there, and then the plans changed, and so there's just an extremely wide right-of-way here compared to other streets.
Yeah, the original plan didn't have Kramer coming north, so in Menlo it was, lots going east to west, and at some point that had changed, had Kramer, push through lots 8 and 7, and when they did that, they just abandoned, discontinued those 2 lots, but didn't change lots 7 lot 6 or 9 to typical 4 feet behind the sidewalk.
Any questions on trustee Carpenter?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So then does lot 6 have the same?
Correct, if you
right-of-way?
look at the, I don't have the page number, if you look at the village map, it's slightly different. You can see on Kramer Street to the south of it, house 3560, the right of way is further west than it is for 3568, but it's not as extreme in that case.
Mhm.
So if there were a larger research and or map fix in this area, it would affect 1821 Menlo, 3583 Kramer, and 3568 Kramer. And there's a similar occurrence over in Frederick, so right, Kramer, Murray, Frederick. Frederick has a similar discrepancy in that area. This is just coming to us because the property owner had reached out to us to apply for a fence in that area, so we discussed that this actually, is village property, and it's a weird instance of village property, but
Yeah, they didn't know, right? They thought that That was the problem.
No, yeah, actually, it was, I'm Todd Hutchison, I'm the owner. And so, yeah, when they bought it, there's bushes all along that side by the sidewalk. And so we assumed that we had ownership of that, and I didn't find out about it actually until I went to pull the fence permit, because we wanted to just take down the bushes, put new ones up, and put the fence up. And so then at that point, I said, well, couldn't we just vacate that? And it was explained to me that, well, that's a longer process. And if you want to get the fence done, why don't you apply for the fence permit for the variance, and then at the same time, we'll also try to start the vacation process.
So at this point, just trying to procedurally put this together. So at this point, if we grant the fence permit, I noticed that DPW raised some objections due to the fact that we may want it to be green space in the future, but there's no concrete plans for that. If we did in fact grant the fence permit, however, and we wanted to make green space somewhere in the future, we didn't make any changes to the ownership of the property, we'd be able to do that, even if we grant this fence permit, right?
Correct, it's a special privilege, so at any point, if the village finds better reason for that land, they could have the fence removed. So yeah, granting the special privilege would not preclude any future activity unless it is ultimately vacated. So that question is for a different day, this question was just for the fence. And it is understood that ownership is not transferred at this point. The fence would be installed. We have staff has no current expectation that there's going to be use for that area.
And nor do I just wanted to ask the question just so.
Sure.
And the other thing to consider is permissive use would not be considered adverse possession.
Trustee Carpenter?
So just to clarify, because in the packet it did say that DPW was not in support of this, I thought I had read, but you're saying that staff doesn't mean that was just a little confusing to me, that, because the bushes would be ripped out for after the read. So, I guess just looking to you as sort of your,
So that's a great way to clarify. So this memo was drafted prior to, we had a meeting with Leanne and Joel, and at that point, their initial response was, we could use this for a purpose. After meeting with them, I think that they were clear that they didn't anticipate using it for a purpose, so I don't know that I updated the memo.
okay.
And Rebecca was in the meeting with me. I don't think that they're necessarily opposed to the fence at this point.
Okay.
They would, as with any special purpose, they want to make it clear that the village, if we should need that, for any purpose, would have the right to remove it. So they are always somewhat hesitant to grant permission, but that was a prior, more firm stance. After the meeting, I think they were fine. They added this subject to the 90 days clause because they were interested in keeping the vacation conversation moving forward.
Thank you.
Trustee Mentor?
This is the second one we've had in 2 meetings, and this is the last one. If this property were to sell, the new buyer would probably assume this is my property, look, there's the fence. So I do think we need to come up with some way to, have some information continuing with the title or somehow so that future buyers understand that they don't own that, they're not buying that, especially in this case where it's a pretty large, I'm sure you're 14 feet, so.
Yeah, point well taken, and President Rosick did request that Plan Commission bring that back in November for discussion of modifying that, and that would be one aspect that we would look into, the implementation of how we could do that.
Well, I don't know if it's the recommended motion. I'll move the recommended motion, whatever it is. I move to approve the application for special privilege for a fence within the public right-of-way at 1821 East Menlo Boulevard, subject to complete application of request to vacate the right-of-way within 90 days.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I had a question. What's the subject to complete the application of request to vacate right away within 90?
So as I mentioned, that the applicant was interested in doing that. In my discussion with DPW, they said, if he's interested in doing it, can we find some sort of clause to make sure that he applies for it? Because they didn't want to grant it and then not continue the conversation. So they had requested that I add that here. Leanne and Joe aren't here to further explain what that might be, but the applicant has already indicated that he wants to do that. He's given me, I believe we actually do have the application on file. The issue is we don't have the complete drawings that would go with it. So the completed portion is what would need to be moved forward, because they'll need to hire a surveyor to finalize, you know, the technical drawings for the application to be submitted.
So the village is gonna be asked to vacate, they're gonna formally request that the village vacate the right of way, and then it would revert back to the adjoining property owner.
Correct. And quite honestly, if they don't, it would just come back to the board for your consideration as to whether or not you want to keep it approved. It really was just an intended reminder to make sure that the applicant move forward with that.
So this, I would still, if there could be some more research on what's on the actual deeds at the county, on what.
And I can do that as part of the vacation process, we'll go to plan commission for recommendations, so I can try to dig in as best I can.
Rebecca, did you have something?
No, I just wanted to make clear that this approval is subject to them applying for it to vacate this property within 90 days.
Correct.
So there's no special granting of a special privilege unless that action happens.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Could I have one question? Would it make sense, since we have 3 properties that all have a similar situation here, to have all 3 apply for the vacation at one time? So it's all cleaned up at that corner?
Yeah, I can't control who applies for what, but to me that does make sense. But if they don't want to, I don't know that we can require them to. But yeah,
But if
they're willing to, I think it would make sense.
If they're willing to, it would make sense
Correct.
to do it all at one time and get their whole
Yes.
corner cleaned up.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
6E, consider 2020 request for fire extender payment.
Yeah, I just don't really understand why you're contracting for it instead. It just seems like a strange way that the rules are set up, where the Shore Foundation pays for it, but we actually sign a contract with their, it seems like they were doing the procurement process for it, and, I mean, maybe it should just be a village contract, and they receive a grant from the Shore Foundation for that purpose. And it just seems like the way this is set up administratively is kind of cumbersome.
My understanding is that the village has been signing a contract for the foundation for what is a village contract, which is why I asked for it to come here just for compliance with the policy, but that they provide us a small amount of funds for that contract. So.
But I mean, it seems like it's the foundation that was calling and finding who the alternate vendors are, and quotes and that will sit there and do that for them. So, I mean, I'm sure it's just something that historically it has happened this way, but I'm not sure. Either I think either have the entirely foundation contracts for the case for it, or us and receiving a donation for it. So that's just my comment on that. I mean, I don't have an issue with approving it tonight. So I'll move to approve the sole service contract for the fire extender in accordance with purchasing policy and vehicle policy.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
That's item 6G, consider appointment of Ryan O'Connor to the design review board.
Yes, I pulled this item, I was curious, and maybe I missed this, but I didn't see in the packet an application.
Yes, so he did have an application on file and has applied. I don't know off the top of my head, I had a list of applications.
Okay, I was just wondering why it wasn't included with the packet materials. I just didn't understand.
So we'll need the reminder to.
Okay, just because if we're asked to make a decision on appointing someone without the information on which to base that appointment, so
Yep.
I guess I would in the absence of that information, I would ask that we defer this to the next board meeting. Just procedurally, I think it sets a bad precedent for us to not have the information, especially since we've discussed this over the term. And there's probably, so anyway, I would move to defer the consideration of the appointment of Ryan O'Connor to the Design and Review Board to the next board meeting.
Second.
Just have one question. Because there were some challenges meeting quorum with that particular board, so I don't know when their next board meeting
They meet
is.
this Thursday,
Okay.
and I'm not sure if we would have enough time to actually onboard this person for that meeting anyway, so.
Okay.
And as of now, we have no quorum issues identified for Thursday, because the
Okay.
agenda went out, and we do ask them to let us know if they're not coming. And so as of now, I don't anticipate it being a problem for that.
Okay.
And then the board would meet before the next design review board meeting as well, so there could be time to make that work.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Hunt.
I mean, I had some of the same concerns about not knowing who this person is at all and then not getting any information. But then I did recall that, and I'm not sure that every trustee knows this because only if you're not in JP&L, but there is a place on Dropbox for volunteer applications, which I think we can all access. You have to kind of keep going back and back, and then there's a folder of volunteer applications, and it's alphabetical. So at least I just wanted to point that out so people know if you want to find someone's app. And I didn't think of it until too late to look at it today anyhow, but. And also at JP&L, we did talk about the whole appointment and process. And I mean, I think we as a board need to have a discussion about, you know, rationalizing the process, but also do we really want to give up, you know, face-to-face interviews entirely? I mean, they're very time consuming, but so anyway, we bounced around some ideas for how we could possibly have maybe like a big event and invite all the committee chairs and all the people who are applying and sort of have like speed dating, and so we can meet people and get a sense of who they are. So anyway, we had some good, we're trying to brainstorm ideas to make it, you know, not quite so time consuming, but still have an opportunity to make a more informed decision when we appoint people.
Trustee Carpenter?
And just to piggyback on that, we also discussed having, as appointments come open or are vacated, having some sort of backups. So we, you know, identified some people sort of as runner-ups, if you will, so that we've, you know, approved and have sort of, you know, luckily we have people who want to serve and have the space for. So, you know, we think that that could be a good way to somewhat resolve some of that issue.
Trustee Bachhorst?
Yeah, and just to add to that, because I'm glad we're having this discussion now, I was looking to JP&L, one of their agenda items was consider annual appointment timeline. And on that, you know, there have been a lot of changes that have occurred over the years as far as committee commission and other appointments. And I've seen since, you know, especially in the last couple of years, the decision being taken from the many and put in the hands of the few. So in your discussions on that, and I know we may disagree on this, but right now it seems that almost all the decisions are being made by the president and the JP&L chair, which is again only 2/7 of the whole electorate or of the whole board here. So, and I know that, you know, it can be done, but just because it can be done that way doesn't mean it has to be done that way. So, and many of us have expressed that concern in the past. So, in those discussions, we might want to think about making this more of a democratic process, and a lot of this, especially since there is so much interest in these committees and commissions, and they are given, you know, a lot of pretty important tasks and charges. So, anyway, with that, yeah. So, we have a motion.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? I just want to say I like the idea of speed dating. I like the idea of you know, getting to know people face to face. I realize the interviews are be very time consuming, so maybe we kind of put a good alternative to that. I also agree with Trustee Bachhorst that, you know, we want procedurally we want this information in the packet. So motion second.
So the motion is to just refer to include the application.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-1. Public hearings, there are none. With that, we move on to the new business section of the agenda. And the first item on new business is consider approval of contract for Shorewood Connects facilitator.
We have.
So we'll turn it over to Rebecca for this one.
This is not anything new, but it's the first time that we had a contract for, the person who will be assisting the Shorewood Connects facilitator. For the last several years and since inception of the program, it has been with Sue Kelly. As you'll recall, we reviewed and approved an RFP that went out to the community to solicit for a new facilitator in light of her resignation from these items moving forward. So we have found another candidate, and we're in conjunction with our protocol. If there's a new contract, we bring it forth under new business to the village board. So the individual being approved is Vashti Lozier. So it comes to you for approval this evening.
And this is paid from what funds?
It is funded through the Benjamin Fund. And I apologize, I keep forgetting whether it's straight Benjamin Fund or both split 50/50. And I don't believe she has that in the system. I have to double check that.
I don't think there is a fiscal note.
No, there's not. This one let me see.
The contract says they'll pay the provider up to $1,000 a month.
Mhm.
Is it 1,000 or is it, could it be less than 1,000 or is it, how do you, is it just 1,000 a month?
My understanding is that it could be less than 1,000 a month. So it's based upon hours.
Is there a rate for the hours or is there?
Right.
Schedule?
And,
According to the schedule for payments, maybe there's something in the proposed.
Is your question,
How's the compensation, is it a flat fee 1,000 or is there some hourly? Because that's what I was wondering, this is quite a list of activities.
From what I recall in the RFP, they discussed, and I apologize because that wasn't included. There was, I don't see it in my packet, is it? Okay. That there were hourly rates not to exceed the 1,000 funds, so that was a capped price. And my understanding is that it could have been less than 1,000, and then done on an hourly basis, but it's never to exceed that 1,000.
So she's paid on an hourly basis a certain sum. It's not reflected
And it
here.
doesn't exceed,
No,
correct.
cannot
At least based
exceed.
upon how the RFP was written. It was reviewed by this group.
So we don't know the hourly rate.
No, I don't know it off the top of my head.
Trustee Buckmars?
So, I'm not saying this is the case, but would it make sense to perhaps have more information and have the individual here to answer questions, or,
Sure, that'd be fine.
and I don't know what the rest of the board, how they feel about that, but it is, I am kind of curious as well, and thanks for catching that, trustee Maher, regarding what the hourly rate is and whatnot, since we are scrutinizing a lot of our contracts right now, and I don't know, I think we might disagree on what a fair hourly rate is here, but if it were, a lot higher than what we typically ballpark, we would want to be able to ask questions on that.
Yeah, because the schedule for payments might be in the RFP,
Right.
which it should just say as contained in the RFP dated. Is there a time deadline though? Do you need to get this person on board to get going?
Yeah, I mean, that would be my concern. I mean,
Elizabeth did not say. I don't know if you know any of her.
We'd be fine with, for 2 weeks,
Okay.
from what I know, so.
Trustee Mental?
I mean, but under section 2, it outlines what the projects or duties of the contractor are pretty specifically. So, I mean, I think it's a contract where we're saying these are the things you need to do, and this is what you're being paid. So, I mean, I guess I'm saying because the expectations are laid out so clearly, I don't really have an issue that we don't have an hourly rate, because we know all these things are going to be done, which seems like quite a lot for $12,000 a year.
From what I know, with Elizabeth working with Sue Kelly always far exceeds the amount just because of all the things that she has to do on a monthly basis. So I wonder if that's one of the reasons why an hourly rate wasn't put in. But
Yeah, and thank you for that clarification. I guess with this being a new contract and with us maybe having some questions, it might be nice to invite the individual here. But if the rest of you are fine making this decision without, all of that information, that's fine. I'll go with majority.
I guess my thought process is I'd be okay with approving subject to coming back with some of the information. I mean, again, I'm hearing there's no, is there time sensitivity or is there not?
I would,
no,
an additional 2 weeks is going to be.
we could put on maybe consent agenda next, and maybe the person could still come for special, the early part, just to introduce himself.
Is there anyone here who doesn't know her?
Well, we're interviewing someone for a professional service, that's different than knowing someone.
I don't think we're interviewing this person, they've already been
Well,
selected.
all right, considering this person for a 3-year contract with our village for a tax fund, so yes, it's different than knowing someone in the community.
The senior resource board is already approved.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about the mechanism of payment, how it's made, how a person's compensated. It's unclear when I read this. Is it hourly? And also, could she have more, some months where you're doing cleanups, or there could be a lot of hours in one month? Is it 1,000 problematic if you're doing some big push and then other months it's slower? I don't know. But it should be clear how you're paying the person. Is it hourly or is it hourly payment? It's unclear to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm struggling. Trustee Gardner?
I was just looking through in the links in the packet, I couldn't seem to find, it doesn't mention the RFP, but do we have access to the RFP? And I'm just
I think we approved it.
Yeah,
I don't recall which meetings, I don't know what.
I know, that's what I was trying to look at to see if maybe it detailed in the RFP how the payments were being made, but I couldn't find that, so I just didn't know, Rebecca, if you maybe had.
I don't know off the top of my head,
Okay.
and it wasn't filed in the RFP folder.
Okay,
I have the RFP in front of me.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
would you mind?
Oh.
So if you don't mind, if I may speak.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, pulling it up, because I was personally